We start with a little review on Adam, and we're going to go through it from the viewpoint of the covenants. And that's going to be I'm going to try to keep that as my focus along with the storyline. So I'm going to try to show you the storyline and how the covenants define the storyline. That's my goal, and we'll see how well I can accomplish that. So we're going to start with Adam, and we did this one before, so you guys know, but now that you understand how covenants are made, you would know that Adam's covenant, which isn't even called technically a covenant, would not have been following that pattern that I showed you last week, because the pattern hadn't been invented yet, because Adam comes first. So this is God designing this, not man. So there's that. And it's basically a covenant of works. That's how the theologians define Adam's covenant. Because here it is. God tells Adam, your job is to take care of the garden, be fruitful and multiply, and he has all these conditions. I will be your God, I will be with you, and God is present. Like, right there, it hit me when after Adam sinned, I always digress. After Adam sinned and he's hiding, he hears the Lord walking through the garden. It's not that, so it's not like a spirit type thing. If he hears them, there's footsteps going on. I just thought that was really cool because God is present in the garden with him. And as long as Adam obeys the rule, everything goes on perfectly. So it's called the covenant of works only because if Adam does not obey that one rule, the covenant's broken. So this is not an unconditional covenant like the other ones have been. This is called the covenant of works. And like I said, the word covenant isn't even in there. And if you want to go read a bunch of big hot shots, half of them are going to say it's just a standard and not a covenant, and the other half's going to say it is a covenant. And, okay, so anyway, so it's just a technical thing there. I'm trying to figure that out. Do you remember our 6 main people from the first week? Our 6 main people for over the whole Old Testament. Do you remember who they are? Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, David, and Jeremiah. Do you know why I picked those 6? Not that Joshua's not important, not that Elijah's not important. Those are the ones that have covenants. Okay, so that's why we picked that. There are a couple of other people. Matter of fact, there's covenants all over the place. I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 covenants in Genesis that were covenants between a man and a man. Okay, so there's covenants all over the place. There is one other main covenant between God and a man. It's the covenant with Phineas. Anybody know who Phineas is? Yeah, see, I figured not. So, it's an important covenant, but it's not a storyline driving covenant. So I didn't add that to the list. So anyway, 6 main covenants. So those are our leads going in as the story develops. So today we're going to go from Adam to Noah to Abraham. So we're going to try to do 3 of them today, which is a challenge for me. So Adam, obviously, doesn't obey the covenant. He gets taken out, and then the world continues, and it goes on, and they have kids. They have lots of kids. Do you know that Cain builds a city for his son? How fast do we have to have lots of people for Cain to build a city for his son? I mean, they don't have TV evidently. And probably the birth rate is very successful. There probably isn't a child mortality rate very much. And they go on like that. The other thing that's continuing, if you notice, as they go from Adam to Noah, there's no more new rules. I mean, the only rule given was don't eat from the tree. And now that's blocked off, so there's no more new rules. And so humanity just gets to go for it. And the result is terrible. And the very first set, Cain and Abel, we have murder immediately. You know, well, maybe not immediately, but like, I don't know how old they were. Maybe they were 60, maybe they were 120. They lived at 900, so they could have been anything in here. But the very next event God tells us about is murder, which is, it's not like, okay, they were gossiping, okay, he stole somebody or something. You know, it's not like, I mean, those are all sins and those are all terrible, but we jump from Eden to murder. And that's a really fast thing. And then they are going to multiply tremendously. They are going to live a long time, and there's no restraints on the function of the human race. And the result is chapter 6 in Genesis. And you guys all know what happens in chapter 6? It opens up, and God looks down, and basically he says, oh, this is a disaster. No. I'm sorry I did that. And it appears as though it's taken God by shock. And, oh no, what did I do? That's how people like to read, who want to mess with the truth, like to read this story. And God looks down and says, I'm sorry I made man. And I was thinking about that. I go, God, okay, you are inspiring the words. Why are you inspiring the words this way? You know, so that it can throw like question on God's character. And so here's another question. I sat in my chair and thought, had quite a lot of questions. So, all right, if you knew mankind was going to just disintegrate like that, why did you do it? You know, and you can say, oh, because he loves us so much, and he wants to give his love. Well, he is totally content and able to give his love within the Godhead. So it's not like a need to, because God doesn't have any needs. So there isn't a need to express love. And there isn't that he didn't know it was coming. And there isn't that he needs to have a second chance to see if he can do a better job. And so after I'm going, okay, so I go through this and I go, and finally it was like, you're not going to know. I go, oh, okay. There's just a whole bunch of things about God I'm not going to know. Because it looks like he's going to say, I'm going to start over, we're going to see if it works this time. And that's not, that's how it looks. But that's not, so I'm saying, when I get there, I have this thing I tell the kids when they ask me questions I can't answer, like, where did God come from? What did he do before he decided to make man? What did he, was he bored and he needed something to do, and I finally go, this is what I got, kids. I got this list. And it's this list, it's probably 10 miles long now, and it is all the things I'm going to ask God when I get to heaven. And so I said, if you've got questions like that, put it on the list. And then pretty soon they go, okay. And then we're done with that question, because, all right, that question is on the list. So if you ask me, what was God's motivation on all this? I'm going to say, it's on the list. Because I can't come up with it. I can't figure it out. It's part of that area of thinking that's higher than our thoughts and greater than our thoughts. So with that solved, we can open up Genesis 6 and see what's happening now. The conditions on the planet are really bad. There it says that the thoughts of man are evil continually. It says there's wickedness everywhere. it says, it goes a little bit further, and in one of the verses later, it's violence all over the place. So we have lots and lots of people, by the way. I think that we have this huge population by this time. I do not know how big this population it is, but it's a very large population. And when he says that he's sorry, I did this helped me a lot this week. I had someone I knew who got sick. And I said in a text to them, I am so sorry you're sick. And I thought, oh my goodness. I just said I was sorry. And I have no guilt in this whatsoever. It's just a phrase for me expressing how I feel about them being sick. I thought, whoa, maybe God's expressing a phrase about how he feels without it being something that is like, I'm sorry, I'm apologizing type of thing. Which is, I thought, that is like, he kind of smiled on me with that little piece, and that I enjoyed thinking that. And it's also something called an anthropopathism. How many of you guys have heard this word? I forgot to get all the hands out. Okay, so anthro is from anthropos, and that means like man. And this is pathology, I don't know. This is like how you think, emotions, da-da-da-da-da. That's what this comes down to be. And it's non-physical. Like if you say, God is sorry, we would understand that because humans are sorry. Okay, so this is something, I'm just going to say emotions, but I don't know if that's correct on that one. So what it is God taking on a human characteristic to help explain to us what he's thinking. Does that make sense? Okay. There's another one called an anthropomorphism. And this is physical. And this is man. This is God taking on a physical characteristic to help explain to us what's going on. The hands of God. The eyes of God look all over the earth, watching everything that's going on. Well, God doesn't actually have hands or eyes. So this is an expression that gives a characteristic, either a non-physical characteristic or a physical characteristic that is like man to God, just so we can understand him. Because if he only talks like God, we'll never understand a word he says. If he only talks in the realm of God, he's got to talk in the realm of us, or we can't figure it out. So those two things that was really helpful to me to learn those two things. You don't need to necessarily learn the big words. I just wanted to show you what they were and where they came from. They come from Greek base. Because you guys have heard of anthropos. Anthropomorphic? Yes, all that. Okay, that is the word for man. Right? Okay, so all this is going on, and God says, all right, you got 120 years. Oh, by the way, you're going to have to forgive me. My brain is like all over this whole book today, trying to sort it in. When Jesus talks about his second coming, he's going to say, it is just like the time of Noah. When they're eating and drinking and they're getting married and engaged in marriage and all that kind of stuff, right? And I'm thinking, no, wait a minute. That sounds just like a wonderful, happy culture. But wait a minute. God just said it was evil all the time and violent all the time. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, is the culture so much that they think that's normal? That's scary, because as bad as our culture right now is, it's not like that. It's not like that yet. It might be getting close, but it's not like that yet. there's actually some good things going on. And there are actually some good things by unbelievers going on. That happens. There's a man who has helped for 3 years in Creative Arts Camp with a very intense job, has put in a good $500 to $600 each year of his own money, and he's an unbeliever. And I thought, you know what? This is an example of someone who is, we're not at this point yet, just because that does exist and we do see it. So that was in Matthew 24, I think, and so that's where Jesus talks about that. He tells Noah finds favor or grace. So there's one person who has favor and grace. There's one, and he's considered righteous in his generation. That doesn't mean he's perfect or anything, but compared to what's going on, he's considered righteous. And he finds grace, and he wants to respond to God. He's the only one left. Can you imagine that? Now his family's going to go with him, but God doesn't say that about the family other than that they will follow their dad. He says it about the dad. And he's 600, well at this point he's 480 years old. And God says, okay, you got 120 years. And that's what's left. Now that's a really long time for us in the lifespan of a 900-year-old lifespan. That's not as long as it seems in comparison. And he goes, I want you to build this ark and this big boat, and he does, and he follows the dimensions, and it's all real specific. And if it's that big, I think that everybody else around knows what's going on. And they are nobody, and 2 Peter tells us he's a preacher of righteousness. So while he's doing it, he is explaining what's going on to the public. And the ridicule is probably unreal. Because nobody responds. For 120 years he has a ministry that no one responds to, and God still honors that. That's encouraging for those of us who don't see a lot of response to ministry from time to time, right? So here's this going on, and I'm sure there's, probably the newspapers go out with pictures, what an idiot this guy is, he's building this thing, and he says it's going to rain. Well, probably, if you remember how when God created and he divided the waters over and below, there probably has never been rain. So we don't have rain. Rain doesn't water the earth. It waters through this mist. They have never seen rain. So not only is he building this thing for 120 years with only the help of his 3 sons, and which is a lot of work for people, and their wives, I'm sure, but I don't know how much the wives built the ark, or they gathered the food or grew the food, whatever. And so there's no rain, and I wonder if I could stand up to that and keep, for all that time. That's a long time. And then, so it's all done, and he's got the window around. It looks like it's an air vent window around the top. It does not look like this, in case you're curious. That's probably not the ark. It probably looks like this. The door. Okay? Water. All right? That's probably what it looks like. It doesn't have a boat, cutesy boat shape. There isn't a boat. Nobody's had a boat. A boat is a brand new thing. So not only is a boat a brand new thing, rain's a brand new thing, building the thing's a brand new thing, and this guy's an idiot. Right? There's probably a vent like this. That's the window, maybe. If there's going to be 3 stories, and animals everywhere. I would and you're going to be in there for a year. I'd really like an air vent. just saying, that'd be nice to have an air vent. And so there's 3 stories in this thing. I don't know, this isn't in the Bible, but I did read someone who did the research on this, the size and the animals and everything, that you could fit all the animals in one level.
I would hope so.
And you could fit the people, and I gave Noah's family, there was room for a huge amount of people to come into this ark, and didn't. If that evaluation is right. I've heard that a couple different times from people who've done.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there was lots and lots of room. It's not that the animals made it so crowded, you know, like the little picture here with all the animals, like it's so darn crowded. There was room for people to come in. So he gets it all ready. Of course, you know the story. God brings the animals, and they go in the door, and the door is open, and there's a ramp. I'm trying to figure out how to make it look like, you know. and they go in, and then it's open for 7 days. And one of the places, if you read through the story, you'll find that it's open for 7 days. And they're bringing anybody could have come in. For 7 days, that door stays open. And I thought, you know, and then he keeps saying, it's going to rain. We've got 4 days left. You can hear Noah standing up here on the top with his megaphone. You got 4 days left, and then it's going to rain. And they're laughing at him. And the animals all are coming in. And he goes, see, the animals, they're smarter than you. They're coming in. Come on in. God wants you in. And they're laughing at him.
That's a picture of the ark.
That's a picture of the ark.
In Kentucky.
In Kentucky, yes. So we get to the last day, and God closes the door. So they don't have to close the door. They don't have, chains on it where they haul it up from the inside. God closes the door, which means that door is sealed. That door is sealed. That door is not going to open again, and no water's going to leak in. And then everything breaks forth. So it says that the deep breaks forth. That's the word Tehom, and it's what they call, what is like the primordial deep. Everything, the deep waters under the earth. And that, in those days, what the deep was scary. The deep coming forth was later on in Jewish thought that was, or in ancient thought that was the abode of the abyss, that was the abode of the dead, that was the scary thing. You never wanted to go to the Tehom. That's a bad place. There's another word for waters, that's Mayim, and the waters, when the Tehom comes up, the springs come up, and the Mayim, so you've got this and the waters, and then the heavens, which is the same word for God created the heavens and the earth. That's Shemayim. That falls down. So this is incredibly dramatic. By the way, this is climate change. And it was not caused by cars or pollutions or burning wood in your stove or cows or anything like that. God was in charge of climate change. This climate change is so massive that it is, for those who like Institute of Creation Research and places like that study all this, that was when the Tehom comes up and the deep breaks forth. That's when the continents divided up. And if you put those continents, you look at a world map, you can see that the continents kind of fit. And the continents divide up into their places. That's when oceans are made. That's when all that happens. So when mountains come up, and the whole, can you imagine the condition, the earthquake that would feel like? And all of a sudden, these people did not, who did not respond, are gone. And that is one serious thing. And you also have to realize that prior to that, there was never a cloud, because you had this canopy thing. It's kind of a theory that maybe the Earth did not revolve around the sun. Maybe the Earth just rotated, because there were no seasons. So what happens if an Earth that just rotates for night and day from the sun? I mean, this is just theory, I can't tell you, but this is just it. What happens to the Earth if all of a sudden it moves? And you're on the ark, and it's on water. I mean, can you imagine and I hope God put a comfort over all those animals before they just completely freaked out, you know?
I remember as a child being taught that maybe one theory was that the flood caused the Earth's tilt.
Yes.
Which created the seasons.
Which created the seasons too, and the elliptical rotation, yes. So all I'm going to say is major changes took place at this time. Really, took 40 days for all that water to fall down. And I've been when it's raining incredibly hard, and that was nothing probably compared to what was happening when the rain comes down. So that's quite a thing, and that's the story of that. Well, before it all happens, before it even happens, God promises Noah a covenant. And we're following the covenant. So here we are. I think it's in like 6:18 maybe. We haven't gotten to the flood yet. The flood doesn't happen just yet. He's still building. And he says, and he's talking to Noah, and he says, behold, I will, it is 17, I will bringing the flood of water upon the earth. Well, there had never been a flood. I'm wondering if Noah said, can you define that for me? What does that mean? And rain. I just need the definition of the word so I know what we're talking about, you know. Destroy all flesh, which is the breath of life from under heaven. Everything that is on earth will perish. But look at this. I will establish my covenant with you. I mean, what? Now that we kind of have an idea of how valuable a covenant is, this is really a huge gift that he gives to Noah. And you shall enter the ark, you and your sons with your wife, and your sons' wives with you, and every living thing, and on, all the living things, and Noah does. 22. Thus Noah did, according to all that God commanded him. So he has the promise of a covenant. The covenant actually hasn't been made yet. But God said, I will establish my covenant. So they're on the ark. You know, they're on there for a little over a year. And it's like that before they come out. When it does land on Ararat and the waters do go down, and you know about the raven and the dove and all this, and they come back and she brings the branch, and then the dove doesn't come back, and he knows it's good. He doesn't go out the door. He takes the covering off and goes out the roof. The door is still sealed. He takes the covering off and goes out the roof. I just think that's a cool picture of my salvation is sealed. I'm safe in this ark, and when my life is over, I go out the roof.
Yeah. Well, God sealed it in, so it was like God's super.
That's Debbie King's application of the story, just so you know. But I love the idea that I can't get out the door. I can't get out. When the whole crisis of life, which sometimes is called that, it seems like that, you know, and the whole flood of life is over, I get to go out the roof and go to heaven. So he takes off the covering, and he goes off the roof, and they all go out and they populate the world again. And it doesn't take long before there's lots of people. The people are not starting as Adam started, because these people all have sin natures. But immediately God has changed things. And first of all, because of the massive climate change, the lifespan is way, way, way shorter. And you know how I argue with, I don't argue with God, I question God. And say, okay, all right, why do we need the life? I mean, everything is there. Nothing is just random with God. Oh, that was the result. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that if I changed the climate, you guys would all live a little shorter. You know, you would die sooner. It's not like that. So I'm thinking, okay, what is going on here? And my thought was, if each person's lifespan is shorter, that rotation of the sin nature cannot continue within one person. So maybe this puts a limit on evil, because each one doesn't live so long with, because those people who were living with their sin natures for 900 years were not interested in God. And so it just promoted and promoted and promoted. He is also going to establish some laws, or at least one major law. And that's going to be part of this covenant. So that's just a thought. You guys can chew on that. I'm still chewing on that. So he does that. This is the judgment came in, and that was killed everybody. We know that man's life drastically diminished. Noah does live to 950 years old because he's 600 when the flood comes, and he lives 350 after that. But it starts to diminish really quickly. If you look on here, these are thousands of years. So this is covering 2,000 years, right? Okay, so Noah is there's only about 60 years between the death of Adam and the birth of Noah. Which is why I put it on like that. Isn't that crazy? All right? Abraham is going to be born before Noah dies. And not that they knew each other or talked to each other. There's a lot of people on earth, but still, Abraham is going to be born before Noah dies. I thought that was really interesting. Oh, and one thing about dates, a lot of people who are way, way, way smarter than me tell that the years and the dates given in the Bible don't mean years and dates. And they mean other significant things. And I haven't wrapped my brain around that yet. And so I personally set that opinion aside and go with the dates, because if God says he was 29 years old when his son was born, and then he lived 500 years after that, and I'm thinking, and that's all that those whole passages are about. Have you read Genesis 5? Then thinking that it should just mean what it says. So as we go through the Old Testament, I'm just going to take the years for what they say. And if I find out later that it means the other, then I'll confess. So in case you've heard, I'm sure you've heard that. I'm sure some people have heard that the years don't mean what they say. But I prefer to just organize my thoughts around the years meaning what they say. So I'm going to go with that. And as if you work your way backwards, it puts Adam at approximately 4000 BC. And I've been told that between 2000 and 4000 is non-measurable time, because we have no external evidence that, like archaeological evidence, that dates a thing to give us this time. So those who say that maybe are not saying that the Bible is good enough, that we need external evidence on top of it. I don't know what their viewpoint is, but as of Abraham, we have external evidence that places him at that time frame. Okay, so that's from then on, which is how you can add more years. Like let's say you need 10,000 years for the story, that you need, like carbon dating and such like that. That gives room for that. This is my disclaimer. as I go through dates, okay?
I think Nathan just likes to complicate things. They just might complicate.
I think things get complicated real easily. There are some actual biblical questions on dates that I have. I'll get to that when I get to the book of Exodus. And okay, so we have seasons, and God remembers Noah, just like God said that he's on the ship, and said God remembered Noah. Well, just like it said that God was sorry. Well, God hadn't forgotten Noah. So this is another one of these. Because you can't just say, oh yeah, we have been neglecting Noah. I just remembered we got Noah down there in the ship, you know? He's still floating around there. They're going to run out of food in the next year. We better do something about this. So it's not like that kind of remember Noah. It's him constantly thinking about Noah. This is him, you know. So that's cool there. All right, so it dries out, and they go out through the roof, and they continue life on. It could be, I'm not sure, that because of the massive climate change, I've heard this from other people, that bacteria and things entered into the climate for the first time. Which would give some reason as to why Noah, who now has a vineyard, gets drunk on wine, but he may not have ever had wine before that was fermented. So they had, if it was not, that's just a theory, because he gets drunk on wine later on, and there's this big issue with his sons and whatnot. And so there's that thought on that. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I'm just giving you all kinds of possibilities. And so one of the things I love about the story of Noah is if you are teaching 2- and 3-year-old children, the story of Noah is all about how much God loves the animals. Well, 2- and 3-year-old children love the animals, and God's going to protect the animals. And this is such a wonderful story for entering them into God consciousness. They get to hear about this wonderful God that's invisible, that they have to believe in, that loves the animals and takes care of them. And so I love that this story can develop God consciousness. It's one of the best ones there is. If you take this story and you teach it to, let's say, ages 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, around there, you've got a great story for the picture of salvation. You know, Jesus is the door. You go through the door and you are kept safe. And you are kept safe from everything. And then when life is done, you go through the roof and you go to heaven. So it's this wonderful picture about that. If you're teaching teenagers and you have even just a little bit of the scientific knowledge, you can use the story of Noah with archaeology, geology, and all the fossil movements and the traces of the flood in every single area of the earth. You can use it for like the Grand Canyon, how did that get there? And you can present tremendous evidence for the truth of God's word from the story of Noah. And if you're teaching adults, you can talk about the great covenant God has. So here's how the covenant's going next. The covenant, God promises to never judge the earth again this way. The first thing you would notice is there is a judgment coming. It's just not this way.
Right.
He will never destroy all the people just in the judgment as a blanket judgment. Each one from then on is going to be an individual judgment as far as people go, which is really interesting. Not that he was unfair to those, I'm just saying that. And this particular covenant is for all the land, it's for his creation as far as grass and animals and everything like that. So he takes this covenant from Adam and he moves it to everyone. I've got a plan for this planet. And it's going to be, how do we promote the story of redemption through this plan for this whole planet? When we get to Abraham, we're going to have it siphoned down to one person as God starts making it a specific story. But the whole planet is involved, and all the people are going to have this opportunity, which I love that this is a whole human race covenant. And the rainbow, the bow, oh, by the way, the word for bow, it's not rainbow, we call it a rainbow, it's just bow. It's the same word as a military bow. So when you pull the bow and arrow, that's the bow that's in the sky. That's the word that God puts in the sky. That is, a judgment is in the sky, and it's not going to happen. There's like, Jonathan Edwards said, there's a bow, but God does not have an arrow up there. He just has the bow. So that was his comment. I thought that was interesting, that is a weapon of war that is in the sky, the bow. You can't see a rainbow without water and sunshine. So there's always hope when you see a rainbow. And the best time to get a rainbow is when there's water. So if you take water and you make that a hard time in your life, and you take the sunshine and you make that hope, you always have hope in a hard time. And that's a good picture of rainbow.
So you said the part of that covenant is God promises not to punish the whole, but the individual. Where do we actually kind of
Get that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just
There is a whole coming where he punishes, where he wipes out the earth, and that is with fire.
Okay.
Okay. The individual is in Hebrews 9:27, where it says that it is appointed unto man once to die, and after that the judgment.
Okay.
And it's singular.
I mean, it makes sense. I was just
Right. And then, of course, as you stand in front of the great white throne, judgment, that's in Revelation 20. And it's, he's going to take out the books, and you can get the picture of each person walking up saying, look how good I am. He goes, well, let's read the story, And he opens the books, and then, he's going to read the story. And, of course, the standard is absolute holiness. So if you don't have that, you don't get in. And if you're not in and the ones who have that are written in the book of life. And if you go there and you're not in your name is not here, then you don't get in. And then the opposite, next person comes up, and this is the thief on the cross, and he's a criminal, and he might have been a murderer, and he's a thief, and he didn't do anything. He didn't get baptized, he didn't read his Bible, he didn't obey, wasn't nice to anybody, didn't have any offerings, he didn't give any of his money, nothing. And he's standing there, and he goes, I don't deserve to get in. And then God looks over his books on his thing, and yeah, he's terrible. But he's got his name in the book of life, so he has the holiness of God, the perfection of God assigned to him, and he gets in. It's going to be quite a judgment to what's going to happen at that time. I'm really glad I got my name in that one. Because this one's not going to be so great. That one might be, just need my name in that one, that's all I was doing. Okay, so we'll take a break, and then hold on to your seats after that, because Abraham through the end is like one fast train ride. So I was asked about, I did not mean to bypass the Nephilim. Everybody wants to know about the Nephilim? So I will give you the various viewpoints on the Nephilim. Everybody is excited about the Nephilim, who they are, what happened, and all that. The actual definition of the word is like something they can't really define. Okay, so the word Nephilim.
the random.
Giant.
So there is a giant. They're mentioned.
So I will give you the theories and then I'll let you guys pick which theory you like. Okay? The one curious thing about the Nephilim is that whoever they are, they died in the flood, right? And yet there are Nephilim after the flood. So what I'm telling you is that it cannot be, it has to be more like a title or a kind of thing and not a specific group, because it doesn't matter if, let's say they were just one-legged people, all right? And all the one-legged people died in the flood, and then we have one-legged people later, then something, they lost their legs, I don't know what to say. So no matter what they are, no matter what you figure out they are, somebody called Nephilim lives later. So that messes with a lot of theories. And so here's one of them. We have the sons of God and the daughters of men. Okay. Most of the time in the Bible, the sons of God refer to angels. Most of the time. Not all the time. So this isn't a slam dunk. Okay, I'm just saying that. Daughters of men would be female humans. And you gotta remember that time is evil massively everywhere, right? So if these are fallen angels, and these are women, the fallen angels come in and mate with the women, and they produce a mixed breed called the Nephilim. That's one theory. There's problems to that theory. One thing is that not all the sons of God are angels. Not every reference in the Bible is about an angel. Several of them are. But there also is the statement that Jesus says later that angels don't procreate. Okay, so here's the theory that these angels, at this time, are the fallen angels, since we're way back in the previous, culture back there, that those were, the reason that angels no longer procreate is because those did, and when the flood came, those were sent to the abyss, which will be later opened up when they open up when the Euphrates River dries up in the book of Revelation and the demons come out. Remember that passage? Okay, so that's where they went. These guys are the mixed race, and these guys then become the mighty men and the gods of, I don't know, Greece, Rome. You can see those guys that are half human and half weird and half this and half that. That's where the idea of these came from memories from the people who got off the ark, because they're all dead. Okay, that's one theory. Another theory is that, let's take the angels out. Okay, so you got all that, I'm taking this all out. All right. Another theory is the sons of God is the line of Cain, and the daughters of men is the line of Seth, and they mix. You get something of a similar thing. You get the mighty men, which refers to the great military guys. Okay, so there's that theory. There's, I think, a third theory, but off the top of my head, I can't remember what it is. So pick your theory and add it to your list. Ask God when you get there. I don't know what else to say. That's where it's at, because I've seen the pro and cons of both of those main theories. There is Nephilim later, so whatever this is, it produces the Nephilim. Whatever it is when they enter the land to conquer the land, they find a Nephilim there. And those guys died. So it can't refer to it has to have more than one meaning to the word, because they all got, right, is that, Ellen, does that help? That's the theory on the Nephilim. And Patty showed me that if you look at a rainbow from God's point of view, it's a complete circle. But she's got some gorgeous pictures. She saw several of them when she was up in a helicopter looking down on Hawaii with a misty, cloudy, whatever. And she sees all these complete circles, like 5 of them. And it looked gorgeous. She has pictures. So you want to see that? That's really cool. All right. So at this point, we're going to move on to Abraham. I'm skipping over the Tower of Babel and all that, just because of time constraints. So you have the list of who has, you have in, after Genesis 9, we have, I didn't go over the whole covenant. Covenant included, Noah's covenant included capital punishment for murder. That was in there. It included you could also eat meat, which apparently wasn't the case prior to this, but you couldn't eat meat with the blood in it, and I think that means not only the blood itself, but while the animal is somewhat alive, yeah. You couldn't be cannibalistic about it. I mean, like that. That's because in the same passages of talking about the blood, it's talking about the life and all that. So I don't know if it pushes it that far, but you got to remember which culture they were coming from, and it was very severe. So you could eat meat, but you couldn't eat meat with the blood in it. So you drain the blood, which is okay with me because I'm not really into blood, just letting you know. So that is added to, and it was definitely set up as capital punishment, and I can see that because of the previous one of violence constantly. So God is putting restraints on how violent life can get now, and that's the first law. Was that one? Pass, don't eat out of the tree. That's the first one I found. Okay, so now we go down through the generations, and we come. Do you remember your map that we got on the first day? And we have. See if I can do this real quick, because I only brought that map. We have. So we're going to make this the Tigris and the Euphrates. This one kind of comes over here. And the land's going to kind of go like this. And here's Egypt. And here's the Dead Sea. Okay, a little bit, figure out what's going on here? Maybe? Somewhere down here is Ur. And that is where Terah and his family live. Terah is Abraham's father. And Abraham has, Terah has 3 sons. They're Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran dies young. Haran has a son named Lot, and this is the Bet-Ab here. Okay. Terah's going to move his up here to Haran. I do not know if it's named after his son. I know his son dies before they get there, so I don't know if it's just a common name. I don't know that. So, but he moves them up to here. And his plan is to join Canaan. They eventually get to Canaan. He's got that plan, at least that's what I think it says. And by the way, I read over this so many times, and I happen to know the chapters and layout of Exodus really well. And and I messed it all up last week. So, and I don't know the chapters and layout of Genesis specifically as well, so odds are I'm gonna mess it up this week if I call the wrong chapter names out as to what's going on. So, but they are up there, and at this point is where Genesis 12 starts, right here. So Abraham is up there with his dad and his brother and his nephew. His nephew is Lot. And they're up there, and God says, oh, and it tells us at the end of Joshua, the end of Joshua, he's reviewing their history, and he's telling them why they are to choose the Lord their God and move on. And he goes all the way back to Terah, and he says that they worshiped idols. Okay, so we know that they worshiped idols here. So that is Abram's childhood. That's his training. That's a huge issue in the deal, because this is a polytheistic society, and all of a sudden God talks to you and says, okay, throw everything you've learned out and follow me. And when Abraham does that, that is massive faith. You see how big a faith that is. My faith in God has been trained from my parents and my grandparents and my great-grandparents up as far back as I can remember. And if you can go back in my genealogy, we can trace it back for several hundred years of somebody in the genealogy who had at least stated that they attended church. And I can go back 10 or 15 generations. As a matter of fact, it's my sister did all this, and I am related, I'm direct descendant of the cousin of Charles Spurgeon.
Ooh.
Okay, so it goes all the way back. You go back further than that, I am a direct descendant from the evil King John. So somebody, somewhere back there, evangelized somebody in this line, and it has carried through. So when you give the gospel to someone, you have no idea how far that will, what the repercussions of that are. So that is just a cool story there. Anyway, that's me on another rabbit trail. Now where are we at? We're studying what? Abraham. Yes. Okay, so he was raised in a polytheistic culture, and he gives up his idols right here, or whatever, and he believes God, and he sets out for a trek to Canaan. Canaan is, by the way, the grandson of the original Canaan. The people of Canaan are the grandson of Noah through Ham, and the whole story with the grapes and all that, and Noah's found in a compromised position, and two of his sons go in with their backs turned, and they cover him, and the other one does not say what the other one did. Everything that is said about what the other one did is conjecture, but his grandson Canaan gets cursed through this story. I don't know for sure what Canaan did or what happened, but he gets a curse. Anyway, his people live here. So this is why this is called the land of Canaan. That's the story of that. So they are there, and everything, my orientation to where things happen in the map is I identify it as to where it is in relation to, and actually the Dead Sea is not that big compared to this. So this is out of scale, okay? But I find my places in relation to this. Like, I know Jerusalem is right there, right to the side. I know that Galilee is, Nazareth is about right there, okay? Or maybe up a little bit, but we're about right there. We know Canaan is right, Capernaum is right there. So we know Jericho is right there. So everything, I find my places so I know where I'm at. And it's really cool to actually see it. And so anyway, if you can orient to the Dead Sea and the Sea of Galilee and the river, then you can orient your cities as to where they are. And you can kind of follow the trail of where the pattern is and what's going on here and there, moving here and there. Because we're going to enter in and out of the same city several times. One of them is Bethel. One of them is Ai is mentioned. One of them is Shechem. Shechem is mentioned several times. A lot of things happen in Shechem. It's kind of neat to know what's going on, where you're at. Same thing happens in the United States. We hear a story and we go to New York City. And what do? My mind immediately says, sees a map and knows where New York City is. And if they say Washington, I go, that one, that one. Right? And you just get some orientation based on location. So that's kind of helpful to do, to just get some basic places and you kind of learn where things are at. He is told, oops, I gotta get out of Noah. Sorry. Come on, Noah. No. Oh, here's another thing I need to tell you. You see the timeline? It's no longer 2,000 years. It's 200 years.
Yeah.
Okay, I had to do that, and I don't have them both on one page, and I looked at it, I spent quite a bit of time on this, I had them both on one page, and that's way too confusing, because that doesn't represent everything right, so I did it on 2 pages, and on my computer, your color lines are very distinctive, but they did not print that way. So I thought I'd lay out how the people overlap, and they were colored just anyway, so sorry about that. So he gets called, and so I open your Bible. God calls Abraham at the very beginning with the covenant. This is so cool. He says, by the way, Abraham is 75, and even back then, see, we're already down from the flood. Getting to be 100 is old. Back 400 was still a teenager. Now 100 is old, and he's 75. So he's in this last half, he's at the end of things. And so he's 75 years old, he's up in Haran, and God calls him, and he calls him with the covenant. And it goes like this. Oops, I got it back to Genesis 12. I'm never going to get through this, so. All right. Now the Lord said to Abram, go forth from your country, from your relatives, and from the Bet-Ad. See it? From your father's house. Oh, this is huge. To the land which I will show you. He doesn't even tell him where you're going. It's like taking a road trip with no clue. We're just going to head that way. Okay. I'm greatly impressed with Abraham, just put it this way. I will make you a great nation. And he's 75 years old with no kids. And I will bless you. I will make your name great, and so you shall be a blessing. I will also bless those who bless you, and I will curse the one who curses you, and in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. So here's the 3 main tenets of the Abrahamic covenant. Here, let's get the Nephilim out of here. They're gone. They drowned. Okay, he's going to get okay, he's going to get that. That looks impossible. He's going to get that. He's going to get land. He's going to be a blessing to all the families of the earth. And he's promised protection. Those who bless you, I will bless. Those who curse you, I will curse. That's a promise of protection. And that's what he gets started with. That is the huge covenant for the nation of Israel, for the people of Israel, for the descendants of Abraham, the whole thing. This is the big picture right there. And Abraham believes this. He packs up his wife, and they get their camels, and they get all their stuff because he's quite wealthy, and they take Lot, and they establish a new Bet-Ab, and they take off that way. And how God leads him specifically, it doesn't tell us, at least I could figure out, but he does, and Abraham follows. This is huge, because to do this, he has to also leave his belief system in the polytheistic gods. He has to leave his dad. He has to leave everything and go on. And when we studied that gives you a clue of how impactful that is. So Abraham does, and he follows him. What did I do with my thing? And they come to Canaan through the north, and they enter through this, at least tradition says they enter through this northern place called, which will be called Dan. Probably isn't called Dan at that time because the person that's named after hasn't been born yet, so it's probably not called Dan at that time. I didn't bring slides or anything, but there is a arch at this city that is all there. They've filled in the arch just to keep it from falling. So it's all solid, but you can see the arch is part of the wall of the city, and it's by tradition, that's where Abraham entered the land. And I just stood there thinking of this story. And I'm looking at it going, I don't know, this is such a big moment in God's story. And there's the arch, and he enters the city. And it's really neat. So, they go on. Let me try to get through this quick. And then, so they go through there. Abraham believes this, and it's not very long before they get so big that they have to separate Lot and him. I might be skipping over some parts, okay? So, and they have so many people that they have to divide the bed up. And Abraham says, okay, our herdsmen are fighting each other because there's too much going on, there's way too much stuff, so you pick your spot, I'll pick my spot. Now, I saw the area that Lot chose, and it's not at all like what was described. I'm just saying. So they stand about right here, and he looks over and he goes, I want the Jordan Valley. The Jordan Valley is like God's garden. He calls it Eden. Not directly, but he calls it God's garden. And that was the best. Lot picked the best. Abraham says, fine, I'll let you have the best, I'll take the rest. And Lot picks that. You look there today, that does not look like God's garden. Does it? No. It is desolate. It can't even grow what deserts grow. Because not only is it the Dead Sea, it is the area around it is just desolate. Nothing grows there. And Lot was a herdsman. He was not a mineralist. If you were a mineralist, you would go there and you'd make all kinds of money because it was salts. And they do make money. It's one of their biggest incomes. But he wasn't that. He was a herdsman. So he picked the most beautiful area. For that to happen, this had to not be dead. Okay, so way down here is the Gulf of Aqaba. This is a theory, because I wasn't there, I didn't see it. But there had to be a continuing river, and that would be the way that this now becomes not the Dead Sea, but the garden. the Garden of God. Okay? All right, it also says it was really evil there, and they had a lot of people. The land was absolutely gorgeous, the people were not, but Lot chooses that. And, and then before long, he has the other kings come in, and they attack, and Lot gets taken hostage. Then he gets taken hostage way up here to Dan, and Abraham has to go rescue him because that is what that Og does. And he goes and rescues him, and then they come down, and then that's where they talk to Melchizedek. And that's where that whole story, that's a whole nother thing. Melchizedek is both the king and a priest, and he becomes the pattern for Jesus being a king and a priest, because in future time, the king, the royalty line and the priesthood line do not mix. So this, when it promises that Jesus is a king and a priest, they can't follow that pattern. They go after the order of Melchizedek. So that's in Psalm 110 and in Hebrews maybe 7 or 8, somewhere in there. So anyway, that's just this little story. Lot goes back to there. I think 10 years go by, and Abraham is still believing God, but it's getting hard to believe God now. So he's setting up his estate, and he makes Eliezer his heir, and he goes, God, what am I going to do? Is my servant have to be my heir? And God repeats the covenant. So one of the things I want to show you is the times God repeats the covenant. So it's in Genesis 12, 1 through 3 is the covenant. Let's see what my next one is. Genesis 15 is the next one. This is the one we talked about last week, and God, and Abraham says, I trust you, God, I believe you, but how do I really know? He has no written Bible. He's now 85 years old. There's no kid in sight. And this is when God says, I will show you, and he cuts the covenant with the animals on both sides, and then God walks through. By the way, the phrase cut a covenant comes from cutting the animals. And there's one verse, I don't remember which one it was, that said that God was going to make this promise with Abraham, and the word make is asa, and then they made the covenant, and the word made is cut a covenant. So asa is one of the creation words to make whereas the cut is different, even though in English it's made and made. In Hebrew, it's two different words. It's actually to cut a covenant, like cut that animal. So that's why you get the phrase, cut a covenant. That's where it came from. So he cuts a covenant, and it's 15, and then he also adds that in this one, he adds you're going to have 400 years of slavery. But he says that you will die in peace. Or something close to that.
And buried at a good old age.
At a good old age, yes. He's going to be 175, so that's a pretty good old age. Now he's 85 right now. He thinks he's near the end. And he's not. Isaac's going to think the same thing, and he wasn't. But so they do that. And it does say that it's going to come through his loins, meaning his real son. It can't be Eliezer. Eliezer was a great and faithful servant, but he is not going to be the heir. Okay, so there's a little thing you notice right here, is it doesn't say it will come through Sarah's right now. It just says it will come through Abraham. All right, so a little bit of time goes by, and Sarah is going to do what is the cultural norm of the time. So as you read it, we would go, you have got to be kidding. What wife would do that? That's applying American culture or present culture to that time. In that time, if you did not have a son, there was no heir. And the wife's job is to provide a son. And if she cannot, she takes her maid and gives it to her husband so that she can provide the son. And that son then becomes, if they would say like, we'll have her born on Sarah's knees type thing, which makes it her son when it's given out, okay? It's just like having a surrogate, all right? So, that's what happens. And it's Hagar. Hagar gets, you feel kind of sorry for Hagar. She kind of gets, crammed into this, and she does that. And Ishmael is born, and that doesn't turn out real good. And then a little bit later, so that all story plays out. Let's see, when's my next one? In 1518, it's going to be repeated again. I just want to show you this. In 1518 through 21, this is the third time this covenant is repeated. And we haven't gotten to Isaac yet. Okay, so all right, the next thing is there's going to be circumcision. And now Abraham is 99, and there's still no son. Ishmael is 13 by this time, so he would have been, anyway, Ishmael is 13 by this time. They set up the covenant, and this is going to be the sign that the covenant, every male from here on in needs to be circumcised. And the reason is that each one will bear on them, on their body, the sign of the covenant. So, the time they look at themselves, they say, we are different, we are part of this covenant. We are different, we are part of this covenant. And it's a constant reminder. We are different, we are part of this covenant. You know God has done the same thing to us. Only it's not called circumcision. It's called being sealed by the Holy Spirit. And in Roman culture, go forward 2,000 years. In Roman culture, when something was to be established for sure, they would take a pile of wax, and they would take the signet ring of the main emperor or whoever it was, and they would put the signet ring into the wax. And whatever that wax was attached to was now sealed, like legally, finally sealed. And if you go to Ephesians chapter 1, right around verses 11, 12, and 13, you're going to see that the Holy Spirit has sealed us. And so I thought, I really like that. I really like that. It's not, we can't see it. They could see it was physical. Ours is spiritual, but we have been sealed permanently. So we are part of which is going to be the new covenant. That's the seal of the new covenant, which we are going to get to by the end of this series. So he's he's promised his son, and this time we find out it's going to come through Sarah, or very soon after this we find out it's going to come through Sarah. Abraham falls down on the ground. He thinks this is hysterical. He's 99 years old, and so he laughs. I kind of think this is really cool how Abraham is really real with God. God's standing there in some kind of physical form, and he's telling Abraham that he and Sarah are going to have a child, and he falls down and starts laughing. That's just like, wow, you can be just, really cool with God, right? All right, so that's promised, and then that's in 17. We're going to have another repeat of this. And he's going to have a father of an everlasting covenant. Okay, so then Isaac is born. Oh, we have all Sodom and Gomorrah is going to be destroyed here real soon. So I'm just trying to get through the story, and God is kind enough to explain it to Abraham. And you can see why Abraham would care. He's just had previously gone way out on a limb and rescued Sodom and Gomorrah from being captured, because they were all taken too. It wasn't just Lot, it was the whole group. So he's asking, but no. And that's when, and so when Sodom and Gomorrah is destroyed and God pours down fire and brimstone and Lot's wife turns to salt, now we can tell why we're looking at the Dead Sea like it is. Okay, so the whole thing changed up. I've heard people theorize that if you could drain the Dead Sea, you would find the remnants of Sodom and Gomorrah down there. And maybe not, I don't know. I do know it's dropping, 3 feet a year? It's dropping tremendously fast. And it is currently the lowest place on earth. Lowest place on earth. And if you get in the Dead Sea, you can pretend you are sitting in a chair, just like this, just like that, and just sit there. It's crazy.
Because it's so dense.
It's so salt. It's like 30% salt dense, and the ocean's like, 6%, 5%, something like that? Yeah. And you do not want any of that fluid to touch your face. Just saying. If you get it on your lips, and your lips are even the hair tiniest bit chapped, it will burn like crazy. You don't want that touching you at all. I mean, I was fine from like here down, but yeah. So we were very careful not to get our faces. And then we did this mud thing. And that was really fun. We got to do the great Dead Sea muds and the salts and all that kind of stuff. And then, but you had to go to the shower to wash off your face because you couldn't put your face in the water. But you could sit out there for a long time. Didn't have to try to do anything crazy. Okay, so then then Isaac's born, and the covenant's repeated again. Okay. He gets the covenant, is told that Abraham gets told the covenant, I'm just going to put 21 up there. Abraham's told the covenant will go through Isaac and not through Ishmael. That's important. And we go on, and then comes chapter 22, the sacrifice of Isaac. So, when I was at Israel, I got to go up on the Temple Mount, and I got to see the Dome of the Rock. Was not allowed inside. I'm not Muslim, so I couldn't go inside, but they allowed me to walk around. But I did see a replica of the rock that's inside the Dome of the Rock in the Israelite Museum, and the Israeli Museum. And it's just a big old rock. It's just a rock. It's just a big old rock. It's real wide, however high it is. And according to the Quran, Abraham sacrificed his son on that rock, or started to, and then after that, Isaac was born. So their theory is, it's taught that Abraham offered Ishmael on that rock, and that's why it is now a holy place. Also, Muhammad is said to have ascended into heaven from that rock. So that's why there's a Dome of the Rock there now. It is true that location is in the general vicinity of Moriah. There is the hills of Moriah. So, but Abraham built an altar. He didn't just use a rock. He built an altar. So there's a lot of, I'm going to have to rush, and I hate rushing through the best stories. But God tells Abraham, you're going to have to sacrifice the only tangible piece of this covenant you have. It's one thing sacrificing your son. That is not even comprehensible, but that's the only piece of this covenant. And so he has to sacrifice this, and so he gets up the very next morning early and sets out to do it. I might have sat there for a day or two and thought about it. He brings the knife, he brings the fire, and he brings the wood. And he makes Isaac carry the wood. Isaac has the wood on his back as he's carrying the wood to the hill where he's going to be sacrificed. And there's all kinds of things. He gets there and Abraham builds an altar. There is no altar under the dome of the rock. There's just the rock there. And then he lays the wood on the altar. And then he binds his son and he puts his son on the wood. The pictures are so blatantly obvious that I don't even have to point them out. Jesus wasn't bound, but he was nailed to the wood. He did carry the wood for as long as he could. And God did not stop that sacrifice. So Isaac is saying to his dad, and I don't think he was, an 11 or 12-year-old boy. I think he was older. He is able to climb this mountain, which isn't really a mountain. They called them mountains back then, but compared to mountains in here, they're not very high. But it's a good hill. He has to climb up, and it's steep, but it's not like 9,000 feet or anything like that. And he has to carry the wood. He couldn't have done that he had to be a full-size, robust guy to do this. And he could have taken out his dad in a heartbeat when it comes to binding, and he didn't. But he does say, okay, Dad, we have the fire and we have the wood. Where's the lamb? And it says God will provide for himself a lamb. And it's this amazing picture of what's coming. We get to the end, and you ever pictured Abraham's, he might have been ready to cut his throat. That's how they cut the lambs, was like this, rather than stabbing him like this, but it doesn't make any difference either way. And God says, stop. I know that you are trusting me. I know that you don't believe me. You're not even withholding the covenant. Now, God already knew that. But as he says it, Abraham knows that God knows. Can you imagine how cool that would be? Abraham knows that God knows. And then God provides a substitute for Isaac. So the picture now becomes perfect because Jesus is our substitute. So God provides the substitute for Isaac. And I know you all know this story, but the story's just too cool to not tell the story. And even before they go up, when they have the two people, the two servants with them helping, because this was a 3-day journey and they had all kinds of stuff to take. And Abraham looks at them and he says, the boy and I are going to go up and worship. And then we are going to come down. So can you imagine that faith? So you go to Hebrews, and you go to Hebrews chapter 11, and it talks about the faith of Abraham, and it says that he knew that God was able to raise someone even from the dead. So he totally expected to kill his son and watch God raise his son from the dead. So, and now when you go, and Abraham believed God and was credited to him as righteous, it means a lot.
Right.
It means a lot. And it means a lot because Abraham's not doing any of this on his own merit. I mean, look what he did to Sarah when it was time to go down to Egypt during the during the famine. You guys heard that, right? He says, let's tell the Pharaoh that you're my sister, because if I tell him what the culture of the day was, if they wanted the woman, they'd kill the husband and take the woman. That is standard operating procedure back then. So he's not just like coming up with some crazy idea. That was a real threat, but at the same time he basically sacrifices his wife to save his neck. And so Abraham's not, your pinnacle of perfect righteousness. All Abraham is someone who has put his trust and faith in God. Kind of reminds me of David like that. David was also not the pinnacle of perfect righteousness, but he was a man after God's own heart. So that's really cool. And then God repeats the covenant. And that's in 22. So we've got 6 times right now. I'm almost out of time. We're going to go through Isaac's story, Jacob's story, Joseph's story. We get down to the end. You will find that this covenant is going to be, God is directly going to give the covenant to Isaac. Same covenant. God will later give this same covenant several times over to Jacob. Person who does not get the covenant repeated to him by God is Joseph. And look at the faith of Joseph. At the very end, Jacob is going to pass the covenant to Joseph, but it's going to be Jacob's words to Joseph, not God's words. But God directly gave it to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, and I'm wondering if that is why he's called the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Between Genesis 12 and Genesis 50, I found this covenant repeated 16 times. In some form or another. It doesn't have all the parts in every form, but it will have one part of it or another 16 times. You think maybe this covenant's important? It's being passed on. It's going to be what the people of Israel will look back on as their identity from here on in, because they will be the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Eventually, Jacob's name gets changed to Israel, and Israel has 12 sons. And it's interesting how that all works out. I'm probably going to have to carry over until next week, which is going to end up snowballing me at Martha. Because there's some important things about the genealogies and the things that are coming that are going to change the story coming up, and we need to know what that is. So I guess I will close at the sacrifice of Isaac, and we'll pick up with Isaac's life after this, because to me, even though Isaac's in this story, this is Abraham's story. And Isaac has a story, and Jacob has a story, and they're all important, and a lot of things are going to be continued based on what happens in the rest of Genesis. So I think I'll close right there, since I'm out of time. So, dear Father in heaven, thank you that Abraham could just talk to you like you were his best friend. Thank you that he could fall down laughing. Thank you that he could question you, like, how is this going to work? Thank you that he could trust you. Thank you that you forgave his sins. Thank you that you credited his faith as righteousness. Thank you that you gave them a seal so that they would be able to look at themselves and say, I am one of God's people. Thank you that you've done all of this and even more for us. Help us to remember these things and to just see how incredibly faithful you are to each one of us. In Jesus' name, amen.